The first movement begins not with strength, but with listening, because the knee responds best when it feels understood rather than forced. Sitting upright in a chair, the body is relieved of gravity's full demand, and this alone changes the conversation inside the joint. As the foot slowly lifts and the leg begins to straighten, something subtle happens beneath the skin. The quadriceps muscle, often weakened quietly over years of reduced use, starts to engage again, sending stabilizing signals directly to the knee. From a biological perspective, this muscle acts like a living brace, absorbing load before it ever reaches the joint surfaces, and when it is active, pressure inside the knee decreases in a measurable, meaningful way. Yet beyond mechanics, there is a deeper lesson unfolding here about trust between the brain and the body. Many people stop extending their knees fully not because they cannot, but because they expect discomfort, and expectation alone can limit movement before pain ever appears. As the leg extends slowly, the nervous system begins to recalibrate. Nerves that once associated straightening with danger now receive calmer feedback, teaching the brain that this motion can exist without threat. This is how movement heals at the neurological level, not through force, but through repetition that feels safe. Blood flow increases gently, delivering oxygen and nutrients to tissues that are often undernourished due to inactivity. Cartilage, which has no direct blood supply, depends entirely on this kind of movement to receive nourishment, relying on the compression and release that occurs even in a simple seated extension. Each controlled lift and return becomes a quiet act of joint maintenance, like oiling a hinge that has not been used in a long time. There's also an emotional dimension to this movement that science increasingly acknowledges. When a person straightens the leg without pain, confidence begins to return, and confidence itself alters posture, gait, and long-term joint health. The knee is not just a mechanical structure. It is deeply tied to how we move through the world, how secure we feel standing up, sitting down, and taking steps forward. In this chair-based extension, the body is reminded that strength does not always require strain, and progress does not require speed. The slowness is essential, allowing muscle fibers to engage evenly and preventing the joint from snapping into position, which could trigger protective tension. As the foot lowers back down, control matters more than completion. The lowering phase strengthens muscles just as much as the lift, teaching them to decelerate movement, which is exactly what protects the knee during daily actions like walking downstairs or sitting into a chair. Over time, this simple extension restores symmetry between the legs, improves joint awareness, and reduces the sense of fragility that often surrounds knee pain. It becomes a dialogue rather than a demand, a movement that says to the body, you are capable, you are safe, and you are still adaptable. Even now, even here, even seated, the second movement grows out of rhythm, because the knee was never designed to exist in stillness for long periods of time. When seated marching begins, even gently, the body re-enters a pattern that is deeply familiar to the nervous system. Lifting one foot and then the other while seated mimics the most natural human motion we know, walking, but removes the burden of full body weight. From a scientific standpoint, this reduction in load allows the joint to move freely without compressive stress, which is especially important for knees that feel sensitive or unreliable. Each lift initiates a subtle contraction in the muscles surrounding the knee, particularly the quadriceps and hip flexors, and this coordinated action supports joint stability in a way that isolated movements cannot. As the legs alternate, circulation improves in a steady, unforced manner. Blood vessels expand slightly with each repetition, delivering oxygen to tissues that may have become sluggish from prolonged sitting or inactivity. The knee joint relies on this flow to maintain healthy tissue metabolism, and more importantly, to move synovial fluid through the joint capsule. This fluid is the knee's internal nourishment system, carrying nutrients to cartilage and removing metabolic waste. Without movement, this system slows and stiffness takes its place. With gentle seated marching, the fluid begins to circulate again, quietly restoring internal balance without the joint ever realizing it is being rehabilitated. There's a neurological elegance to this movement as well. Alternating leg lifts activate both sides of the brain, reinforcing coordination and timing. This bilateral engagement improves proprioception, the body's ability to sense where it is in space, which is essential for knee safety during daily activities. When proprioception fades, the knee becomes vulnerable to misalignment and sudden strain. By practicing this movement in a controlled seated environment, the body rebuilds its internal map of movement without fear of falling or losing balance. Confidence grows not from force, but from repetition that feels predictable and calm. Emotionally, seated marching carries a message of continuity. For individuals who fear walking due to pain or instability, this movement restores the memory of forward motion while staying grounded. The mind begins to associate leg lifting with safety again, reducing protective tension that often tightens muscles around the knee and limits mobility. Scientifically, reduced muscle guarding lowers joint compression and improves movement efficiency, but experientially, it feels like relief. The breath often settles into a natural rhythm, and with it, the nervous system shifts away from stress and toward regulation. Over time, this simple alternating motion builds endurance in the muscles that support the knee throughout the day. Endurance, not brute strength, is what allows joints to remain stable over long periods of standing or walking. Each repetition becomes a quiet investment in joint resilience, reinforcing the idea that healing is not a dramatic event, but a steady return to natural patterns. The knee responds by feeling warmer, more fluid, and less hesitant, as if reminded of a role it was always meant to play, moving forward with ease, one gentle lift at a time. The third movement invites us to explore stability without motion, a concept that often feels counterintuitive but is deeply rooted in how the knee protects itself. Sitting comfortably with both feet placed firmly on the floor, pressing the heel gently downward creates a quiet activation that travels upward through the leg. Although nothing visibly moves, muscles along the back of the knee, the thighs, and even the hips begin to engage in a coordinated effort. From a biological perspective, this isometric contraction strengthens the muscles that support the knee's alignment, teaching them to hold the joint steady during moments when movement must be controlled rather than expressed. The knee depends heavily on the muscles around it to maintain proper tracking, especially during everyday actions like standing up or slowing down while walking. When these muscles are weak or poorly coordinated, the joint absorbs forces it was never designed to handle alone. Heel presses restore this protective cooperation. By pushing the heel into the ground, the hamstrings and gluteal muscles wake up, counterbalancing the muscles at the front of the thigh. This balance reduces shear forces within the knee joint, lowering stress on cartilage and ligaments. Science explains this as improved force distribution, but in lived experience, it feels like the knee becoming more grounded and secure. There's also a deep neurological component to this movement. Isometric contractions enhance the brain's ability to recruit muscle fibers efficiently, improving joint stability even outside of exercise. The nervous system learns that it can create strength without movement, which is essential during moments of sudden imbalance or unexpected shifts in posture. This training helps the knee respond reflexively rather than reactively, reducing the risk of strain. Over time, the body becomes better at stabilizing itself automatically without conscious effort. Emotionally, heel presses can be surprisingly empowering. Many people associate exercise with visible motion and exhaustion, but this movement challenges that belief. It shows that strength can be cultivated quietly, without sweat or strain, and that progress can happen even when the body feels limited. This realization often softens fear around movement, encouraging greater participation in daily activities. When fear decreases, muscles relax, and relaxed muscles protect joints more effectively than tense ones. As the heel presses into the floor, the knee remains still, but awareness sharpens. The person becomes more conscious of how weight is distributed through the foot and leg, improving posture and alignment even while seated. This awareness carries over into standing and walking, subtly correcting movement patterns that may have contributed to knee discomfort in the first place. The knee begins to feel supported from multiple directions, not just by muscle, but by intention and attention. Over time, repeated heel presses build endurance in stabilizing muscles, allowing them to support the knee for longer periods without fatigue. This endurance is critical, as fatigue often precedes injury. Each quiet contraction becomes a reminder that the body is capable of holding itself together when given the right signals. The knee responds not with dramatic change, but with a growing sense of reliability, as if learning once again how to trust the structures that surround it and keep it steady through both stillness and motion. The fourth movement is an exploration of gentleness, because the knee is not only a joint of strength, but also a joint of glide. Sitting in a chair with the foot resting lightly on the floor, allowing the foot to slide backward and then forward again introduces motion without impact. This simple bending and straightening respects the knee's natural architecture, which depends on smooth transitions rather than abrupt force. From a scientific viewpoint, this sliding motion encourages the tendons and ligaments around the knee to move freely against surrounding tissues, preventing adhesions that often develop when joints remain static for too long. These tissues are meant to slide, adapt, and respond, and when they lose that ability, stiffness becomes a constant companion. As the knee bends and straightens in this controlled manner, the joint capsule experiences gentle compression and release. This mechanical rhythm stimulates the production and circulation of synovial fluid, which acts as both lubricant and nutrient carrier within the joint. Cartilage, which lacks its own blood supply, depends entirely on this process to remain healthy. Without regular bending, cartilage dries and thins, making movement feel rough and unreliable. With this sliding motion, nourishment returns quietly, and the knee begins to feel smoother, warmer, and more cooperative. There's also a profound neurological effect in this movement. Slow, repetitive knee bending calms the nervous system, especially when paired with relaxed breathing. The brain receives consistent, non-threatening feedback from the joint, reducing protective muscle guarding that often limits range of motion. When muscles stop bracing unnecessarily, the knee is free to move through its natural arc. This process does not force flexibility, it invites it. Flexibility gained through invitation lasts longer than flexibility gained through pressure. Emotionally, this movement often brings relief, not just physically, but mentally. Many people carry a quiet anxiety around bending the knee, fearing pain or instability. Sliding the foot along the floor removes the fear of falling and replaces it with a sense of control. The mind learns that bending does not equal damage, and this belief alone can change how the body responds. Fear tightens tissue, while trust allows it to lengthen. Science now recognizes this connection between perception and physical response, and this movement becomes a practical expression of that understanding. As the foot moves back and forth, subtle improvements in coordination begin to appear. The muscles learn to lengthen and shorten in harmony, improving movement efficiency. This coordination is essential for daily tasks such as climbing stairs or getting in and out of a car. The knee begins to feel less like a fragile hinge and more like a responsive system supported by surrounding tissues that know how to adapt. Over time, this gentle bending restores confidence in the knee's ability to move without consequence. Range of motion improves not because it is pushed, but because it is respected. The body responds to this respect by offering more freedom, more ease, and a renewed sense of comfort in motion, as if reminded that flexibility is not about reaching further, but about moving with less resistance than before. The fifth movement brings attention inward, toward cooperation rather than effort, because the knee does not function alone and never has. Sitting comfortably, gently squeezing the thighs toward one another awakens muscles that are often overlooked, yet deeply influential in knee health. The inner thigh muscles play a quiet but essential role in guiding the knee's movement, keeping it aligned as the leg bends, straightens, and bears weight. When these muscles are weak or disengaged, the knee can drift subtly out of its optimal path, increasing wear over time. By activating them in a seated position, the body learns alignment without the pressure of standing or balancing. From a scientific perspective, this inward squeeze improves joint tracking by balancing the forces acting across the knee. Muscles on the inner and outer sides of the thigh must work in harmony to center the joint, reducing uneven stress on cartilage and connective tissue. This balance protects the knee from the small, repetitive strains that often accumulate into chronic discomfort. At the same time, the squeeze activates deep stabilizing muscles that communicate directly with the nervous system, enhancing control and precision rather than raw strength. Neurologically, this movement sharpens awareness of symmetry. Many people unknowingly favor one leg, shifting weight or effort unevenly throughout the day. Gentle thigh squeezes bring attention to both sides of the body at once, encouraging equal engagement. The brain responds by refining motor signals, improving coordination, and reducing compensatory patterns that place extra load on the knee. This recalibration happens quietly, but its effects ripple outward into standing, walking, and turning movements. Emotionally, there is something grounding about this exercise. It requires no motion, no visible exertion, yet creates a sense of inner strength and containment. For individuals who feel uncertain about their knees, this inward engagement restores a feeling of support from within. The body no longer relies solely on external stability, but begins to trust its own internal structures again. This trust reduces protective tension, which in turn allows the joint to move more freely and efficiently. As the thighs press together, the pelvis and hips also become involved, reminding us that knee health is inseparable from hip stability. Strong, coordinated hips reduce rotational stress on the knee, particularly during activities like walking or changing direction. This interconnected support system is how the body was designed to function, not as isolated parts, but as a responsive whole. The seated squeeze offers a simple way to reawaken this system without complexity or strain. Over time, repeated engagement of these muscles builds endurance and control, qualities that protect the knee during prolonged activity. Endurance allows muscles to maintain alignment even when tired, preventing the small breakdowns in form that lead to discomfort. Each gentle squeeze reinforces the idea that strength can be subtle, cooperative, and sustainable. The knee responds by feeling more centered, more supported, and less vulnerable, as if reassured that it is no longer carrying the load alone, but sharing it with a system that knows how to work together.